Hi everyone, it's Taehyung. Thank you for being here with me today. I know a lot has been happening lately, and I know many of you are worried, confused, and maybe even hurt by the things you've seen online. Before anything else, I want to say this clearly. I'm okay, I'm calm, and I'm here because you deserve to hear the truth directly from me, not from headlines, not from rumors, and not from anyone trying to twist the story for drama or attention. You've been beside us for so many years, supporting us every step of the way, and I never take that for granted. So tonight, I want to talk to you honestly, not as an idol, not as a celebrity, but as Taehyung, someone who cares deeply about the people around him. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying. And thank you for giving me the space to speak in my own voice. The studio lights were burning hot that morning, but nothing was hotter than the tension simmering beneath Jungkook's quiet smile. Cameras stood like hunters. Microphones were pointed at us like weapons. Another interview, another cycle of smiling for the world, pretending nothing hurts. We had done it 1,000 times, but this time something felt wrong. I could feel it the second Jungkook sat down next to me. His breathing was shallow, his fingers tapping with that small anxious rhythm I knew too well. To the world, it looked like a playful fidget. To me, it was a silent warning. He's not okay today. Nobody else noticed. Nobody ever does. The host welcomed us in that overly cheerful voice talk show hosts use, but the reporters invited that day were not fans, not supporters, not people who cared. They came to stir drama, to dig wounds open, to sell headlines. The first few questions were predictable, harmless. Then one man front row, suit too sharp, smile too proud, leaned forward toward Jungkook. So Jungkook, let's talk about last month's breakdown, he said. The air froze. Jungkook blinked. I felt his shoulder stiffen beside mine. The reporter continued, pretending to sound compassionate while clearly chasing a scandal. A viral clip showed you crying backstage. Many people think you faked that breakdown for sympathy, for attention, for publicity. What do you say to them? A knife didn't need to be metal to cut. Sometimes words were sharper. The room went silent except for the soft hum of cameras. I felt anger rising, not loud, not explosive, but cold. And when my anger goes cold, that's when people should be scared. I waited for someone to interrupt, to defend him, to stop this. But nobody moved. They wanted a show. They wanted to see him break again. Jungkook swallowed, eyes lowering, not out of guilt but exhaustion. I could see it so clearly it physically hurt. He was tired of being brave, tired of being strong for a world that celebrated his talent only when he smiled, not when he cried. He opened his mouth, searching for words he didn't owe anyone. And that's when I cut in. He doesn't have to justify pain to you. My voice was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that made every reporter straighten up. The man in the suit smiled smugly, acting unfazed. Ah, Taehyung. We're simply giving him the opportunity to clear things up. After all, fans deserve transparency, don't they? No, I replied. Fans deserve honesty. You want drama. There's a difference. Someone gasped. Someone whispered. Cameras zoomed in. The reporter tried again, laughing lightly as if I were overreacting. Come on, we're all professionals here. Crying on camera isn't a crime, but manufacturing emotion? I lean forward. Do you think grief has a schedule? Do you think pain waits for your approval before it shows? Who exactly appointed you the judge of what someone is allowed to feel? His smile cracked a little. Good, but I wasn't done. You don't get to decide whether Jungkook's breakdown was real. Because you weren't there when he fell apart. I was. Jungkook lifted his head slowly. His eyes met mine for half a second, not asking, not pleading, just quietly grateful. I wasn't defending an idol, I was defending my friend, my brother. You know what's interesting? I continued. You insult him on live TV, and the world lets you. But if he simply breathes wrong, people call it a scandal. Maybe the issue isn't him. Maybe the issue is the way this industry profits from human suffering. A heavy silence spread across the room. I wasn't shouting, I didn't need to. Every word hit like ice. The reporter tried to regain dominance. We are simply reporting public interest. If Jungkook is struggling mentally, then fans worry. No, I cut him off again. Fans worry. You sell the worry. More cameras shifted toward me than I had ever seen in my life. For the first time, the reporters realized something they hadn't expected. Taehyung wasn't playing nice today. I turned to the panel of journalists. If you think your job is to expose weakness, that's fine, but don't pretend it's for the public good. You're not guardians of truth, you're merchants of tragedy. Once again, silence. Then I delivered the sentence that would end the entire interview. If you want to talk about his music, his art, his achievements, his growth, great. Ask anything you want. But the moment you make entertainment out of someone's breaking point, this interview is over. There was no shouting, no argument, no warning. It was a promise. And they knew it. The host raised a hand nervously, trying to salvage control, but I didn't give him the chance. Next question. I said, my tone commanding, not requesting. And just like that, the entire room flipped. Nobody dared push further. In the corner of my eye, Jungkook let out the smallest breath of relief. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just quiet survival. The kind you only notice if you love someone enough to look. That moment was when I realized something crystal clear. People think idols need applause to survive. They're wrong. We need protection. Real protection. Not cameras, not fans. People. Someone who won't let the world tear you apart just because it can. I didn't speak again for the rest of the interview. I didn't need to. Every reporter in that room knew exactly what would happen if they crossed the line again. And for the first time in a long time, Jungkook wasn't fighting alone. He didn't have to. I was there. The interview continued, but not really. No one cared about the next questions. The air was different, now cautious, controlled, like everyone was walking across thin glass. The reporters shifted their eyes between me and Jungkook, terrified of provoking the same explosion again. They tried to pretend everything was normal. It wasn't. Jungkook answered softly when he had to, but I could hear the tremor in his voice, the exhaustion behind every syllable. He was trying so hard to keep the atmosphere calm so the interview wouldn't fall apart, and that was the part that hurt the most. Even when he was the one attacked, he still worried about everyone else. I wanted to grab his hand right there in front of the cameras and tell him he didn't owe anyone's safety except himself. But idol training teaches you too well. Don't make a scene, don't be emotional, don't give people more reasons to talk. So I sat there quietly, watching him navigate every question with grace that he didn't deserve to be forced to have. The interview wrapped earlier than scheduled. No one admitted it, but everyone knew the reason. When the cameras cut, the host stood up quickly to greet us, his face apologetic but his hands shaking. He whispered something about never expecting that question and promised next time would be more controlled. His voice didn't matter, it was noise. I helped Jungkook stand, placing my hand on his back gently to steady him. To the world, it probably looked like a friendly gesture. To me, it was my way of saying, "You're safe, I'm here." We made our way backstage to the dressing room. The noise from the set grew distant, muffled, like the world was shrinking behind us. As soon as the door closed, the silence was heavier than any sound. Jungkook finally exhaled, and it wasn't relief, it was defeat. He sat down slowly, eyes fixed on the floor, thumb rubbing the base of his palm like he was grounding himself, trying not to fall apart. No tears. Just the kind of silence that screams louder than crying. "I didn't want that to happen," he whispered. I shook my head. "You didn't do anything wrong." He stayed quiet for a moment before speaking again. "They always bring up the worst parts of me." "No," I corrected. "They bring up the parts that hurt you because pain sells more than talent." He didn't argue because he knew it was true. There were knocks on the door, staff, managers, cameras, waiting for backstage shots, but I ignored every one of them. People always want something, even when you're bleeding. Then Jungkook said something that hit me harder than anything that reporter could have thrown. "Sometimes I think if I show I'm struggling, I make everyone disappointed. But if I pretend I'm fine, I disappoint myself." I sat down next to him slowly. I didn't respond immediately. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I knew he needed silence, real silence, not avoidance to hold space for his feelings. After a few moments, I finally spoke. "Struggling doesn't make you weak. Hiding it doesn't make you strong. You're just human, and every human breaks sometimes." He blinked slowly, his jaw quivering just a little, not enough for a camera to catch, but enough for me to see. I continued, my voice low, steady, unshakably calm. "You don't have to apologize for feeling anything. Not to me, not to the fans, not to the world." Jungkook leaned back against the sofa, eyes closed, not crying, not collapsing, just existing. And existing was already a victory after what he had gone through. We sat like that for several minutes, just breathing in the same quiet space. There was no need for dramatic gestures or forced comfort. Sometimes the greatest kindness is simply staying. But that quiet didn't last long. Someone from the production team knocked on the door again, this time more urgently. They wanted us to return to the set to film promotional clips. Jungkook opened his eyes slowly, ready to stand up and push himself again, because that's who he is. But I wasn't letting that happen. I stood first and opened the door just enough to speak. "Jungkook is not available for anything else today." The staff member blinked, confused. "But the contract says he is not available," I repeated, voice sharp enough to slice through any negotiation. "If there's a problem, send it to management." He tried to peek past me to see Jungkook, but I shifted my body just enough to block his view. He nodded reluctantly and left. I closed the door and turned back toward Jungkook. He stared at me like he couldn't believe I was willing to challenge the industry so openly. You don't have to protect me from everything, he said softly. I know, I replied, but I'll protect you from anything I can. Silence again. Then Jungkook gave a tiny laugh, not happy, but grateful. If you weren't here today, I probably would have broken. I shook my head. You didn't break. They tried to break you. There's a difference. His eyes softened, and for the first time all day, I saw a spark of strength in them again. Not the performative strength the world demands, but the quiet kind that grows back after being torn apart. There was one thing I needed him to understand before we walked out of that room. You don't have to be strong alone, I said, not while I'm here. He looked at me with that expression that doesn't need words to say thank you. But the moment wasn't over, not even close. Because what happened next would be the real turning point of the day. The moment when the fallout from the interview would come crashing down in a way none of us expected. And whatever was coming, we would face it together. When we finally walked out of the dressing room, the world outside had already changed. In the span of barely 30 minutes, the interview clip had spread like wildfire across social media. We didn't need to check our phones to know the shift in how people looked at us said everything. Staff members were whispering. Camera operators stopped adjusting their equipment to stare. Some faces showed respect, others showed fear, and a few carried something worse, anticipation. The kind of anticipation that comes right before a scandal explodes. Our manager approached quickly, eyes frantic, voice low, to avoid attention. The interview is trending, and not in a good way. I didn't flinch. What part? He hesitated. All of it. The question about Jungkook, your response, the confrontation, it's everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, broadcast channels, tabloids. The clip of you shutting down the reporter is the biggest one. I could see the panic behind his eyes. Industry rules are simple. Idols don't challenge the media. Media can destroy careers. And I had done more than challenge. I had declared war. Should I apologize publicly? I asked. Not because I meant it, but because I wanted to understand what the company was expecting. No, the manager said too quickly. An apology would imply guilt. You didn't do anything wrong. But that wasn't the real reason. He lowered his voice further. The fans are on your side. Everything is leaning in your favor right now. If we handle this correctly, this could become something powerful. There it was, the industry's favorite move. Take pain, turn it into profit. I didn't react. I just looked at Jungkook. He was scrolling his phone with stiff, trembling fingers. I could see the reflection of headlines in his eyes. Did Jungkook fake his mental breakdown? Taehyung loses temper on live TV. You, BTS members, intense interview after emotional scandal. And one that hurt more than the others. Is Jungkook too fragile for fame? I took the phone gently from his hand before he finished reading. He didn't protest. He was too tired to fight things he couldn't control. I spoke quietly. You're not fragile. The world is cruel. He didn't need to reply. I could see he was holding himself together by the thinnest thread. We walked toward the exit, escorted by security, not to protect us, but to control the chaos outside. Fans had already started gathering after seeing the live clip. Flashlights burst, voices screamed, Reporters swarmed with microphones raised like weapons. The first question cut through the noise. Taehyung, do you regret attacking the press? I didn't even slow down. Then another. JUNGKOOK, did you fake your emotional breakdown for attention? I felt his steps falter for half a second. Not enough for cameras to notice, but enough for my heart to tighten. I placed my hand lightly on his back again, guiding him forward. Finally, one voice rose above all the others, loud, sharp, deliberate. If JUNGKOOK is struggling mentally, shouldn't he take a break instead of dragging BTS down? That was the moment everything stopped, not physically, but inside me. Dragging BTS down. They were calling JUNGKOOK a burden. I turned around before I even thought about it. The security guard tried to block me instinctively, but I stepped past him, eyes locked on the reporter who had thrown the question like a spear. My voice was low, steady, unnervingly calm, the kind of calm that comes right before something breaks. If you're looking for a headline, here's one. The entire crowd froze: cameras, reporters, fans, even security. When BTS rises, we rise together. When BTS struggles, we struggle together. No one carries the group alone, and no one weighs the group down. My eyes didn't move off the reporter. If you think JUNGKOOK is a burden, then you don't understand what family means. And if you don't understand family, you have no business speaking about us. Flash after flash exploded, cameras capturing every fraction of a second. I stepped closer, making sure the microphone caught every word. JUNGKOOK doesn't drag BTS down. He lifts us. Every concert, every rehearsal, every sleepless night. You don't get to rewrite that narrative just because pain sells better than truth. The reporter tried to respond, but I didn't let him. You want drama, suffering, collapse? Go look somewhere else. You won't find it here. The crowd erupted, not in panic, not in chaos, but in something electric, like the air itself had caught fire. Fans started shouting JUNGKOOK's name, louder and louder, building like a wave rising from the ocean floor. JUNGKOOK, JUNGKOOK, JUNGKOOK. He looked around in disbelief, overwhelmed not by hatred, but by love. Tears built in his eyes, but this time they were different. Not pain, not humiliation. Something in him was healing slowly but real. We got into the car and the doors shut, sealing us in silence. JUNGKOOK leaned his head back, eyes glassy. He wasn't crying, not exactly, just letting everything release at once. Why did you do all that? He asked quietly. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I wanted him to hear it without doubt. Because you needed someone, I said, and I refused to let you fight alone. He turned toward the window, hiding whatever emotion he didn't want me to see. But there was something else he didn't know, something I hadn't told him yet. The interview wasn't over. The war with the media wasn't over. And now that the clip had gone viral, the attack wasn't going to stop. Part 1 was the confrontation. Part 2 was the aftermath. Part 3 was the ignition. Part 4 would be the explosion. And when it came, the world would see exactly what happens when the industry pushes too far, and exactly how far I'm willing to go to protect the people I love. The ride back to the company was quiet on the outside, chaotic on the inside. Every phone in the car was blowing up with messages from staff, friends, producers, directors, even celebrities. Notifications stacked so fast, the screens froze. Whatever happened at that interview wasn't just news, it was a cultural earthquake. The first message our manager read out loud made everything clear. Press conference demanded. Media outlets calling Taehyung's behavior unprofessional and aggressive. Then the next, hashtags trending worldwide. Taehyung protects JUNGKOOK, leave JUNGKOOK alone, media apologize to BTS. Two sides of the world, one threatening damage control, the other ready to fight anyone who hurt us. Jungkook looked overwhelmed again, caught in the middle of a war where he never wanted to be the reason. He stared out the tinted window, watching the city blur by, invisible behind the glass, even though millions were talking about him. He whispered something so soft only I could hear. I didn't want this to turn into a battle. I answered just as softly. Sometimes battles happen because silence stopped working. He didn't reply, but he understood. When we arrived at Haiba, we were rushed inside through the private entrance to avoid reporters camped at the main gate. Security looked tense, they had already been briefed. Executives were waiting. The moment the conference room door opened, the atmosphere felt like walking into a courtroom. Screens were displaying live analytics, engagement, views, search trends. Clips of the interview were being analyzed frame by frame. The industry wasn't thinking about feelings, they were thinking about consequences. One executive stood and got straight to the point. Taehyung, the media is demanding clarification. Some are calling for an apology. I didn't sit. I'm not apologizing for defending Jungkook. Another voice cut in more stern. If the situation escalates, it could damage partnerships, endorsements, broadcasting schedules. So it's fine for a reporter to publicly humiliate Jungkook, I snapped. But it's not fine to call out that abuse? Silence. No one dared answer the question honestly. Executives exchanged looks, a silent debate about what mattered more, protecting us or protecting business. Then Jungkook spoke for the first time since we arrived. I don't want Taehyung to apologize. His voice was calm, but it shook the room more than shouting ever could. If anyone should apologize, it's the person who thought mental health was entertainment. The executives didn't know what to do with that. Jungkook rarely pushed back. When he did, people listened. One of them sighed deeply, pinching the bridge of his nose. Fine, no apology for now, but there will be backlash, and it's coming fast. The words had barely left his mouth when it happened like a storm hitting without warning. A staff member burst into the room, pale and breathless. The reporter released a statement. The screen refreshed automatically. The headline hit like a punch. Reporter accuses Taehyung of violence, claims he felt intimidated and physically threatened. There it was, the counterattack. The article twisted the narrative with surgical precision. It painted me not as someone defending a teammate, but as someone who lost control, acted aggressively, and endangered the comfort of press members. They weren't just fighting back, they were trying to end me. The executives exploded into crisis mode, phones ringing, lawyers being called, PR drafting responses. The tension was suffocating, but I didn't feel panic, just clarity. They weren't going to stop unless we stopped them. Suddenly, Jungkook stood up, something he rarely did in front of executives. Everyone turned to him. Taehyung didn't threaten anyone, he said. He protected me when no one else did. One of the executives tried to caution him. Jungkook. We appreciate your loyalty, but if you publicly involve yourself, he cut them off. I'm involved whether I want to be or not. They made me involved the moment they used my breakdown for views. No one had a comeback. Jungkook wasn't just speaking, he was exposing an industry flaw everyone preferred to pretend didn't exist. But the day wasn't finished trying to break him. A notification appeared on the big screen, automatically updating from the news feed. Talk show host who invited Taehyung and Jungkook speaks out. The idol shouldn't have reacted like that. Another followed instantly. Broadcasting network considering banning Taehyung from future press rounds. And another panel of reporters demand company reprimand Taehyung for hostility toward the media. The world wasn't fighting Jungkook anymore. They were fighting me. The easy move would have been to step back, apologize, pretend to be docile, clean up the mess. The industry always rewards submission. But then Jungkook looked at me and in his eyes I saw everything he couldn't say out loud. If you surrender now, you prove them right that defending me was wrong. So I made a decision in that moment, not with emotion but with intention. We won't respond today, I told the room. Executives stared like I'd lost my mind. That reporter wants attention. He wants the spotlight. He wants us to panic. We won't give him any reaction. Then what's the strategy? One of them demanded. I answered slowly, clearly. We won't fight them with statements. We'll fight them with truth. The room went silent. We're going to tell our story our way, not through tabloids, not through press, not through anyone who benefits from tearing us down. It wasn't a threat. It was a declaration. One of the executives asked with caution, "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" I looked at Jungkook and he didn't look scared anymore. "We go public," I said, "not to defend ourselves, to end the narrative." The decision had been made. Part 5 wouldn't be about backlash. It would be about the retaliation, not explosive, not emotional, not reckless, calculated truth, delivered in full view of the world, unfiltered, unedited, undeniable. The next 48 hours felt like living inside a hurricane. Nothing was quiet, not the phone, not the notifications, not even Taehyung's own thoughts. What happened on that stage was supposed to be a friendly promotional interview, yet it had turned into the most talked about conflict in the entertainment world. And for the first time in a long time, Taehyung didn't feel like an idol floating above everything. He felt like a man protecting someone he loved, like family, and the world had seen it. Big networks started replaying the footage on loop. Every major news anchor had an opinion. PR teams panicked, legal departments reviewed statements. The company prepared for war. But in the middle of everything, Taehyung stayed silent. Not a single tweet, not a single apology tour, not even a subtle clarification. He didn't regret what he said. He didn't regret defending Jungkook. And he definitely didn't regret standing up to a question that should have never existed. He knew silence would make them uncomfortable, and he let them sit in. The reporter issued a statement first, a painfully insincere message claiming he meant no disrespect and didn't expect Taehyung to react so strongly. The public didn't buy it. Fans uploaded the full clip, the uncut version the studio tried to hide. It showed everything, the tone, the expression, the provocation. The reporter wasn't curious. He was baiting. He was trying to stir drama. He got burned instead. Meanwhile, Jungkook was pacing around backstage with earbuds in, trying not to look at anything online. But his face showed everything anyway: worry, guilt, and something heavier. Taehyung didn't need words to know exactly what he was thinking. All this is because of me. When Jungkook finally knocked on Taehyung's door that night, he didn't even wait to be invited in. He walked straight to the couch and sat down, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. No cameras, no audience, no stage, just two people who had been through more together than anyone could understand. You shouldn't have had to defend me like that, Jungkook said. You didn't need to go that far. Taehyung leaned forward, calm. You didn't deserve to be humiliated like that. Not on air. Not ever. Jungkook exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Now they're coming after you. Let them, Taehyung answered instantly. I'm not afraid of the truth. There was a long pause, the kind that speaks more than a full conversation. Because the truth was, they both knew Taehyung didn't explode because of the question itself. He exploded because it wasn't the first time. Jungkook had been targeted before by media, by strangers, by critics who didn't know him beyond headlines and rumors. And Taehyung had watched it all quietly for years, until something in him snapped. The world, meanwhile, had already chosen a side. Hashtags calling out disrespect from the media became a global movement. Fan accounts, celebrities, journalists, and even professionals from outside the entertainment industry weighed in. Some called Taehyung too emotional. Others called him a hero. But the loudest narrative was simple artists deserve respect. And despite everything, Jungkook wasn't relieved. He didn't want protection. He wanted to be strong enough not to need it. That night, the two of them sat in silence, watching the city lights from the window, not as idols, not as public figures, but as two people carrying the weight of expectations no one else could feel. Jungkook felt like he was a burden. Taehyung felt like he had finally done something he should have done long ago. Then Jungkook finally spoke again, voice rough. Do you ever get tired of being the one who protects everyone? Taehyung looked at him unapologetically, fiercely, without hesitation. No, he said quietly. I only get tired when I can't. Jungkook's eyes softened in a way only Taehyung ever saw. No stage, no fans, no pressure, just the truth, raw, simple, and painful. What neither of them knew at that moment was that the interview wasn't the peak of the story, it was only the beginning. Invitations, threats, offers, and opportunities were already lining up behind the scenes. Their next step would determine not only their careers, but their legacy. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I know this wasn't an easy story to listen to, and it wasn't an easy one to tell. But I'm glad I shared it not to create drama, not to reopen wounds, but to remind everyone that respect matters and that the people you see on screen are human too. We feel, we struggle, we break, and we protect the ones we care about. If there's one thing I hope you take away from tonight, it's this. Loyalty isn't weakness, and standing up for someone you love will never be something to apologize for. To everyone who keeps supporting us with kindness, thank you. To those who judge without knowing the full story, I hope someday you'll learn to look deeper. As for me, I don't regret defending Jungkook, and I never will. We've grown, we've endured, and we'll move forward together stronger than before. Please don't worry about me. I'm okay, and no matter what comes next, I'll keep choosing truth, loyalty, and love over noise. Always. Thank you for listening to me truly.